Chapter 11 White Devil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Cang technique, when activated, creates a powerful gravitational pull, approaching infinite attraction. Reversing the technique flips the negative cursed energy into positive, allowing Sumu to heal himself and inject this positive energy back into the technique for the opposite effect. So, instead of infinite attraction, reversing Cang results in infinite repulsion. The technique he. Theoretically, Sumu can now unleash he, but unlike Gojo Satoru, he hasn't spent a lifetime honing his cursed energy. His mastery is limited to the memories he absorbed. With only a 23% template fusion, his inherited experience falls far short of what's needed to naturally release he. Right now, it's all about his own control. But with the 6 eyes, he's confident he won't fail. He multiplies the negative cursed energy within him to create positive energy, then channels it according to the Cang technique's flow. The instant he finishes the incantation, a tiny black-red singularity appears in front of his index finger. He pours more energy into it, and the singularity slowly expands under his intense focus. Just as it's about to stabilize, the structure wavers. Seeing the technique about to fail, a twisted grin stretches across Sumu's face. Using the absolute energy control granted by the 6 eyes, and his energy absorption ability, he forcefully stabilizes the singularity. Crack! Black-red lightning erupts from the singularity in all directions, instantly shattering the ground it touches, creating ravines several feet deep and dozens of yards long. Soldiers caught in the blast are twisted and torn apart by the gravitational forces, reduced to bloody chunks. Even Sumu isn't immune. The terrifying gravitational lightning batters his body. His enhanced physique, boosted by cursed energy and energy absorption, starts to break down, only to be rapidly repaired by the reversed curse. Just as he's about to collapse from exhaustion and is about to give up, the black-red singularity in front of his finger stabilizes, shrinking to the size of a mung bean. A powerhouse who had run away feels an instinctive fear, turns and sees an unbelievable sight. Everything around the terrifying man is collapsing, but even so, a cold smile still appeared on the corner of his mouth, amongst the stones that were suspended in the air and were constantly being annihilated, on the bodies of a large number of dead soldiers around, and when the blood left on his forehead dyed his mysterious blue eyes red, a smile from the heart bloomed on his face. Boom! The terrifying black-red singularity, trailing unstable black-red lightning, hurtles towards him. It's so fast even his enhanced vision can barely track it. By the time he reacts, the singularity is already upon him. He instinctively raises a hand to block, but the immense repulsive force of he obliterates any defense. He can only watch as the black-red singularity shatters his arm, pulverizing bone and flesh, then punches through his chest and continues its path. Boom! The black-red singularity flies for dozens of yards, carving a groove over 1,000 yards long before finally stopping. The powerhouse's body is annihilated. He's dead. Time seems to freeze. Only Sumu, panting heavily, moves. Everyone stares at the terrifying white-haired man in shock. Is this even humanly possible? After a brief rest, Sumu advances towards the remaining soldiers. One side is fully armed, the other covered in blood, yet it's the soldiers who retreat. SHIELD agents, the X-Men, Brotherhood members, civilians who failed to evacuate, they all witness the absurd scene. The blood-soaked white-haired man throws his arms wide and laughs, his wounds rapidly healing. He takes a step forward, and the well-trained soldiers take a step back. Again and again, some trip over debris, but they don't dare make a sound, afraid of attracting his attention. No one laughs, no one dares draw his ire. Step by step, the white-haired man disappears around the corner. The air returns to everyone's lungs. Even the mutants are gasping for breath. Every faction has the same thought. Report this. Recruit Sumu. He's clearly a newly emerged level 5 mutant. He'll shatter the balance of power, no matter which side he chooses. In a nearby store, a middle-aged man clutches a camera. Having captured everything, Eddie Brock knows this is the biggest story of the year. A terrorist attack in Manhattan, the death of civilians, a battle between mutants, the raw power of the White Devil. It's an earthquake in the news industry. Sumu rounds the corner and uses his last reserves of energy to pry open a manhole cover and jump in. He moves quickly through the sewers, his wounds still bleeding, reversing. He took far more out of him than he expected, especially forcing the release. Just one use almost drained him completely. If he hadn't conserved energy to create the illusion of strength, the soldiers would have been a serious threat. His level 2 energy absorption can't negate bullets when he's out of energy. As he continues forward, the six eyes pick up something, but he's too exhausted to activate the limitless. He dodges as best he can, avoiding the attack. A dagger whizzes past, embedding itself in the concrete floor. Sumu turns to face a man in a strange, tight suit, for daggers held between his fingers. The thrown dagger was definitely his handiwork. Chapter 12 Killing Bullseye. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the dude in front of him with the weird tights and that bullseye tattoo, Sumu instantly recognized him. Bullseye. That dagger he just dodged. Definitely his throw. Sumu remembered Bullseye's MO. The guy was Kingpin's go-to guy in multiple timelines. Him showing up now had to be on Kingpin's orders. Anyone else, even superpowered folks, would have been skewered. But not Sumu. Even running on fumes, his six eyes could track that dagger. Still, what made Bullseye think he had a shot? Did he seriously think some skilled mortal could take him down? Bullseye sized up the white-haired guy. Tougher than he expected. He'd aimed for the head, but even drained, this guy dodged it, and that wasn't just any dagger. It was tipped with an adamantium alloy. That stuff was crazy hard, could slice through almost anything. Adamantium made that dagger practically sonic. This white-haired dude avoiding it. He had more than just spatial powers. Super strength, maybe. Or something else entirely. If this guy was at full strength, Bullseye wouldn't even think about getting close. But now. Looks like that big attack took a lot out of you, Bullseye said. Even your reflexes are shot. If you were at your best, I wouldn't stand a chance. But now. Ha ha ha. There's nothing like taking down a powerhouse myself. Bullseye was buzzing. Top-tier assassins lived for moments like this, but then he noticed something. The guy wasn't panicking. Like Bullseye was no threat at all, like even a sick tiger could still swat a cat, and the difference between them was way bigger than that. An alarm bell went off in Bullseye's head. He immediately started chucking adamantium daggers, but the guy mostly dodged them. One connected, though, and that put Bullseye a little more at ease. He wasn't so invincible looking anymore. Sumu used what little juice he had left to amp up his body and evade. His six eyes spotted the dagger's special material instantly. That's what let Bullseye punch through his defenses. Still, no sweat. A mortal trying to mess with a god. Not everyone was Iron Man. He asked coolly. Kingpin sent you to take me out, right? Bullseye didn't answer. He just threw daggers faster, even pulled a pistol and started firing. Six eyes tracked every bullet, making them easy to dodge. Even without a confession, Sumu saw the tells in Bullseye's movements and knew he was right. He pressed on. Tell me where Kingpin is, and I'll let you walk. How's that sound? Bullseye still didn't answer, just ramped up his attack, laughing. You can barely stand. You're gonna let me walk. Go to hell. Then, out of nowhere, he pulled a rocket launcher and fired. The rocket exploded right in front of Sumu, engulfing him in flames. Bullseye breathed a sigh of relief. That should do it. Even weakened, this white-haired freak was a pain. A huge grin spread across his face. Taking down a strongman was the best feeling. Enjoying yourself? Think this is over? The voice from the flames froze his smile. He heard the sound of shattering concrete, then the voice again, like a demon. One last chance. Tell me where Kingpin is, and I'll make your death quick. He stared in disbelief as the smoke cleared, revealing the man, completely unharmed. Shrapnel hung in the air around him, unable to get close. Just like the bullets, he reached a hand into the sewer wall, and the dim lights flickered even lower. At the same time, the white-haired guy's wound started healing fast. Bullseye realized it. He was absorbing electricity. You have other mutant powers. He didn't wait. He bolted. Damn it. He's got more powers, and he can absorb energy to heal. Who can even touch this guy? Screw Kingpin. This job is off. Let someone else die, but then, he felt an irresistible pull from behind. Even with his peak human physique, he couldn't fight it. Helpless, Bullseye was yanked back towards Sumu, his limbs twisted by insane gravity until he couldn't resist. The second the rocket launcher fired, Sumu had used the kinetic energy from Bullseye's thrown daggers and the sunlight to jumpstart his unlimited technique. He supercharged his body, punched into the wall, grabbed the wires, and started sucking up electricity. The surge of energy re-engaged the reversal technique and the unlimited technique, bringing him back to full power. The adamantium alloy dagger that had hit him was forced out of his body as his flesh healed, clattering to the ground. His injuries vanished instantly. Seeing Bullseye run, Sumu smiled, then curled his fingers slightly. Everything is attracted by heaven. That he drew Bullseye back, contorting his body into a pretzel, then repeated his question. So, what's it gonna be? Tell me, and I promise a painless death. Bullseye stared at the white demon in front of him, those delicate blue eyes under their white lashes looking down at him, mocking him. For some reason, he thought he saw a strange, black-scarlet color swirling in those beautiful eyes. After completely tearing Bullseye's mangled body apart, leaving only some adamantium alloy skeletons, Sumu finally accepted that the assassin didn't know Kingpin's location. P.S. Bullseye has adamantium alloy reinforcing his bones. Kingpin was too cautious. He never slept in the same place twice, and didn't even tell his closest aides his plans for the next day. Sumu stuffed his hands in his pockets and started walking, the blood and shrapnel floating behind him quickly falling to the ground. Too bad about Kingpin, but no big deal. As his 6 eyes leveled up, his range and perception would only get better. When he could see the whole city, crushing Kingpin would be easy. The cables in the sewer wall were pulled loose by his gravity powers, floating around him, feeding him energy. Energy point +1, energy point +1, energy point +1, energy absorption experience +1, energy absorption experience +1, energy absorption experience +1, energy absorption LV2, 233/300 can absorb most energy types. Absorption speed matches energy storage capacity. Energy absorption was almost level 3. It would be his first skill to hit that mark. What would change at level 3? Would there be some kind of new transformation? Please read and collect. Hi. Chapter 13 News that continues to ferment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Besides absorbing energy, Liu Yan was also leveling up incredibly fast. Those two abilities were permanent, cost the least energy, and were the easiest to upgrade. While Sumu kept absorbing energy, practicing skills, and getting stronger. The world outside was going through some major changes. First, Stark, who'd been MIA for 2 months, showed up and immediately announced he was shutting down weapons development, which tanked Stark Industries' stock and caused a huge uproar. Second, a massive, green-skinned monster trashed Culver University. The military tried to take it down, but it was no match. The monster wrecked the place and then just walked off like it owned the joint. These two stories should have been huge, front-page news, but another story completely overshadowed them. It redefined what people thought mutants could do. Suddenly, everyone was terrified of mutants again. This bombshell came from a reporter named Eddie Brock at Global Daily. He claimed he was there, witnessed a battle between 2 super-powerful mutants, and saw some incredibly destructive abilities from this white devil that were almost impossible to stop. Mutants who can enhance their bodies are already tough, probably as strong as that green monster. But this guy, the white devil, completely overpowered him. That's what Eddie Brock wrote, going on to explain different mutant power levels and claiming the white devil was definitely a level 5. He ended his report by saying, "That black hole-like power is terrifying. Even the stray energy is enough to rip everything apart. A direct hit? Forget about it, nothing could survive. The white devil clearly doesn't have full control over it yet, which means he has even more potential to grow. If he masters that power, he'll be even scarier than Magneto." The report went viral. People were saying, the government told us mutants weren't a threat. How can mutants like this exist? Others were scared stiff. If he keeps getting stronger, he could wipe out humanity. The government has to catch him now. And then there were the white devil worshippers. He's a god. An angel come to earth. We should worship him as our lord. But some other voices stood out, the oppressed mutants. Hiding behind anonymous accounts, they spoke up on social media. He's the savior of mutants. Our leader. The government's been unfairly persecuting mutants, using us for inhumane experiments. This leader will help us fight back. Yeah, we'll follow him anywhere. In a hidden, luxurious room in Hell's Kitchen, Kingpin Wilson Fisk glared at the newspaper, his eyes fixed on the black hole-like energy and the mile-long trench it left. He was supposed to be just a regular mutant. How is he this strong? As time went on, Fisk grew increasingly uneasy, especially with Bullseye still missing. Kingpin stayed up all night, sitting in his chair until dawn. He finally realized Bullseye had failed completely, or worse, after decades ruling the underworld, Kingpin hadn't felt this powerless, this afraid, in a long time. Even as the boss, he was still just a man. How could he possibly fight a god? Miles above the Earth, aboard a massive helicarrier, Nick Fury stared at the intel in front of him, not moving a muscle. Coulson stood nearby, carefully watching his boss, who had been like this for ages. Suddenly, Nick Fury slammed the file shut, looked up, and fixed Coulson with a sharp gaze. Agent Coulson, use every resource we have to find him, recruit him. He'll be a key player in the Avengers initiative. Yes, sir. A simulated breeze rustled through the cabin, lifting a corner of the file to reveal several high-definition photos, the azure black hole, the black-red singularity, the mysterious energy shield, and finally, the wildly laughing white devil. After Coulson left, Nick Fury spoke again, his voice echoing in the room. A mutant this dangerous has to be monitored by S.H.I.E.L.D. In a hidden office, faint screams could occasionally be heard from the outside world, the desperate cries of mutants being experimented on in the lab. Colonel Stryker read the intel and his face turned purple. Damn it! Damn it all! Get more men, catch this mutant bastard. In a secluded location in New York, the two most powerful mutant factions were meeting secretly. If the government found out about this alliance between the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants, they'd definitely see the X-Men as a much bigger threat. Magneto, wearing his signature helmet, and Professor X, in his wheelchair, faced each other across the table. Magneto spoke first. Charles, if we can control his power, we can wipe out humanity and create a peaceful world for mutants alone. Professor X shook his head, looking at Magneto with a serious expression. Eric, you're going too far. Mutants and humans can coexist peacefully. Peace? You're talking about the government's crazy persecution and those twisted experiments. I'll make them change. Hearing this, Magneto looked at his former friend with disappointment. You're too naive. Blood must be repaid with more blood. The Brotherhood of Mutants members behind him looked at Magneto with admiration, the leader who was taking them toward resistance. You're wrong. That's just a small number of people. You can't punish all of humanity for the sins of a few. Many X-Men members, like Professor X, gave Magneto a serious look. Only the kind Professor X could secure a brighter future for mutants. Frustrated, Magneto stood up and headed for the door. The Brotherhood members followed him. I'll find him and bring him to our side. Eric, I'll stop you. Charles, you'll regret this. Sumu had no idea what was going on in the world. He was too busy planning his next move. Unlocking templates took energy, and using skills took energy. He just didn't have enough. Relying only on absorbing electrical energy wasn't sustainable and risked attracting unwanted attention, so, finding a stable energy source was his top priority. The Infinity Stones were out of reach right now. Too risky. So that left him with one choice, the arc reactor. Just then, after absorbing electrical energy for a while, the system chimed in again. Congratulations. Energy absorption upgraded. Any recommendations for character templates? Preferably someone with a lot of skills, cool effects, and recognizable name. Please read and add to your library. Chapter 14 Don't Kidnap Me, Because I Have No Morals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Congrats. Energy absorption leveled up. Energy absorption LV3, 1/1000 absorbs most energy types quickly with a high storage capacity. Sumu felt a huge shift in his energy absorption capabilities the moment it leveled up. First, the range of absorbable energy broadened. He could now absorb nuclear energy and even magic, things previously impossible. Second, his absorption speed skyrocketed, at least tripling the previous rate. And the energy storage limit also tripled. He could now maintain his unlimited technique for at least half an hour, unleashing 5 full-power Cang spells or 3 minimum-power reversed T spells. The character template revealed that the minimum power of the reversed T spell was at least double the maximum power of the forward Cang spell. This meant not just greater energy consumption, but also devastating power. However, Sumu knew his previous successful He reversal was lucky. He might not replicate it so easily, plus, that previous He reversal wasn't clean. A huge amount of energy leaked out. If he used that type of He again, he'd probably be drained after just 2 attempts, so, before gaining more experience and understanding He via the template, he should probably avoid using it. Consumption was one thing, but uncontrolled energy blasts to the brain. No thanks, his current reversal technique wasn't exactly fixing his brain on the fly yet. Besides the increased energy reserves, the faster absorption rate really helped Sumu. As expected, he could likely withstand small-caliber rifle fire now, completely absorbing the bullet's kinetic energy. This meant no more worrying about surprise attacks when the unlimited technique wasn't active. Too bad both the unlimited and reversal techniques were still low-level. He wondered how far he had to go to reach Gojo Satoru's level, where the reversal technique constantly repaired his brain, letting him maintain the unlimited technique indefinitely, and automatically targeted threats. If he boosted his skills even further, he could even filter out poisons that Gojo Satoru couldn't detect, and even block space attacks. With continued improvement, he'd surpass Gojo Satoru and reach levels the guy never even dreamed of. Imagining the possibilities, Sumu felt a surge of excitement. He looked forward to unlocking the character template's plane-hopping ability and visiting the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, using those same moves to defeat the seemingly invincible Gojo Satoru. Now that would be something. He continued absorbing electrical energy, replenishing his reserves and pushing the template fusion to 27%, then left the sewer. The sewer exit opened into a deserted alley. Just as Sumu was about to grab some new clothes, he spotted a girl staring at him, shocked. She had green hair, looked dirty, and seemed weak and helpless. At least, that's what he saw with the naked eye. Through his 6 eyes, he could see the massive green energy hidden within her and the surrounding metal objects poised to move. Sumu immediately recognized her, Polaris. Magneto's daughter, Lorna Dane. She could control magnetism. At her peak, she could even manipulate Earth's magnetic field. A powerful mutant, on par with Magneto. What was she doing here? Sumu was surprised but then remembered that this wasn't any universe he knew, it was an unknown parallel one. Marvel's realities were so diverse that anything was possible. Sumu didn't plan to interact, but Polaris clearly had other ideas. She recognized him. The media called him the world's strongest mutant, a global threat, and the white-haired devil. Others hailed him as a savior and leader of mutant kind. Whatever the title, it meant he was incredibly powerful, even more so than her father, Magneto. Seeing Sumu leaving, she instinctively used her power to stop him. She wrenched a metal pipe from the wall and sent it flying toward him, trying to cut him off, but Polaris stared in disbelief. The metal she controlled stopped dead the moment it got close to him. It just hovered behind him, frozen. Still, she wasn't disappointed. She was actually happier. The stronger Sumu was, the better the chances of mutants being freed from human oppression. She smiled, ready to speak, but the smile froze on her face. Sumu slowly turned, his azure eyes devoid of emotion. That icy stare hit Polaris like a tidal wave. It felt like death itself had placed its scythe on her neck, ready to reap her soul, then she heard a chilling voice. "Isn't it better to just live a quiet life?" That death-like whisper sent shivers down her spine. She snapped out of her daze and blurted out. "I don't mean you any harm. I just want to follow you and fight the human government." But Sumu didn't respond, instead slowly walking towards her. Each step ratcheted up the pressure, as if an unstoppable force was pushing her toward oblivion. Overwhelmed by the threat, she instinctively unleashed her power, sending a barrage of metal at him, but every piece of metal crashed to the ground before him, unable to move forward. That's when she truly understood what the white-haired devil meant. He was unlike any mutant she'd ever met, a terrifying force from another dimension. Even as Polaris strained every muscle to stop him, to halt the approach of death, it was useless. Then, Sumu forced her into a corner, the oppressive pressure pinning her against the wall. Using energy to enhance his strength, he ignored Polaris, gripped the largest metal pipe with his fingers, and hurled it forward. The pipe gained incredible kinetic energy from his deceptively slender arm and slammed into the solid wall right beside Polaris's ear. "Pretty girl, consider this a warning. Your luck might not hold out next time." Then, with a flick of his index finger, the hovering metal around her ignored her commands and sank into the walls around her, trapping her. As she watched the white-haired man yawn and casually stroll away, Polaris mustered her courage and shouted. "You're so strong. You could do so much. You could save mutants. Why don't you?" After a long pause, just when she thought she was being ignored, she heard a nonchalant voice. "What do I care about their suffering?" The white-haired devil turned, revealing a captivating profile and piercing blue eyes, and smiled. "Don't try to guilt-trip me. I have no morals. Please read and save. Don't forget to vote and invest." Chapter 15. The white-haired man caught in the electric current. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ignoring Polaris, Sumu slipped on his sunglasses and stepped out onto the street. Immediately, he noticed people pointing and whispering about him. "Dude's got white hair and shades. Think he's the white-haired devil or something?" His buddy scoffed. "Nah, just a poser. What are the odds we'd actually see the white-haired devil?" Sumu frowned, wondering what this white-haired devil business was all about. Then he spotted a big screen displaying a news report. Watching for a moment, he understood. Was he famous now? On the screen, a man in his 30s was ranting. "I was hiding in a store nearby, only like 30 feet from the white-haired demon, and I saw him battle another mutant. I'm telling you, he's way stronger than Magneto. The most powerful mutant on the planet, hands down." Sumu's face soured. What was this reporter going on about? Sure, he was going to be the strongest mutant eventually, but he was still in the early stages. He wasn't the strongest now. His current spell arsenal wasn't ready to deal with mental attacks, and the Dark Phoenix could wipe the floor with him. Being labeled the strongest mutant at this stage of the game would totally screw with his plans to develop quietly. He glanced at the name tag below the guy, Eddie Brock. The name rang a bell. Then it clicked. That was Venom. Alright, he thought, little buddy. I'm gonna enjoy meeting you later on down the line. He dismissed Eddie Brock and turned his gaze toward the tallest building in Manhattan, Stark Tower. If he wanted the arc reactor, Tony Stark was the key. Heading straight to Stark Tower was the most direct approach. As luck would have it, Tony Stark had just returned and was about to throw down with Obadiah Stane. Saving his life during that brawl should be worth an arc reactor, right? Of course, if Stark still refused to hand over the arc reactor, well, then he'd just take it. Pulling up the hood of his white sweatshirt, Sumu headed toward Stark Tower. The light around him seemed to dim slightly as he walked. Invisible energies continuously flowed into his body, precisely controlled by his enhanced vision and level 3 energy absorption. While absorption was slower than direct energy contact, it was sustainable. This significantly improved his combat endurance and boosted his energy collection efficiency. The system beeped a steady stream of updates. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. 6 eyes experience +1. 6 eyes experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Stark Tower, located on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, was the tallest building in the area. Its distinctive, duckbill-shaped top made it hard to miss, totally fitting for Tony Stark's flashy style. Reaching the base of Stark Tower as evening approached, Sumu approached the entrance but was intercepted by a few security guards. "Excuse me, sir, can I see some ID?" Sumu, of course, had no identification. Knowing he'd be turned away, he replied, "I need to discuss something important with Tony Stark. Could you let him know I'm here?" The security guards exchanged puzzled glances, suppressing smirks with practiced professionalism. One of them said, "Sir, it's not April Fool's Day. This isn't funny." Anticipating this reaction, Sumu rubbed his white hair, a touch of annoyance in his eyes. "I'm serious." Seeing that Sumu wasn't leaving, the security guards' expressions turned serious. They were starting to think he was a troublemaker. Just as Sumu was about to use his powers to convince them, several cars pulled up. A beautiful woman stepped out, followed by men in black suits with an icy demeanor. They ignored the standoff and headed directly into the building, clearly on a tight schedule. Sumu recognized the woman instantly. Long blonde hair, black dress. It was Pepper Potts. Looks like it's my cue to play hero, Sumu thought, stroking his chin. He glanced at the approaching security guards, slowly removed his round sunglasses. The guards froze. Staring into the bright, distinctive blue eyes, they suddenly recalled recent news reports, the white-haired devil. Just before losing consciousness, they saw the man's lips curl into a subtle smirk as he murmured, "Sorry, guys. Time for a little nap." Pepper led the agent swiftly through the building's interior. After Agent Coulson used a mini-bomb to disable a door lock, they moved into Area 16. The area was dimly lit, filled with machinery, hanging chains, and a massive, roughly constructed metal armor in the corner. Looking at the armor, Coulson said to Pepper, "Looks like you were right. He's building a suit." They ventured deeper. Pepper paused in front of a screen displaying complex data, then stopped again near a series of chains. As she was about to proceed, suddenly, two glowing red eyes lit up in the darkness. The scream shattered the night's stillness. Pepper ran, pursued by the towering steel armor. The agents instinctively opened fire on the Iron Overlord, but were swatted aside by its terrifying metal fists. In seconds, only Coulson and Pepper remained. Pepper squeezed through a narrow doorway, escaping as the Iron Overlord became wedged in the solid concrete wall. As she raced past the circular arc reactor, she caught a glimpse of something. Countless streams of white energy erupted from the reactor, crackling like 1,000 birds, engulfing a handsome, white-haired man. Enveloped in the energy, the man seemed unharmed, opening his arms with a joyful expression. More! Stunned, Pepper stopped, momentarily forgetting her escape. Chapter 16 Black Lightning Explodes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After taking out a few security guards, Sumu sauntered into Stark Tower, ready to watch Iron Overlord, the supervillain, come into being. But then, a massive arc reactor grabbed his attention. From Sumu's perspective, raw, incredible energy pulsed before him, like a delectable cake just begging to be devoured. He immediately sidelined Iron Overlord. That hunk of metal wasn't nearly as tempting as this energy. Using the precision of his 6 eyes, he siphoned off a torrent of electrical energy leaking from the giant arc reactor, greedily absorbing it. Energy point +1, energy point +1, energy point +1. Now that energy absorption was at level 3, the floodgates were open. He was mainlining electricity like a fiend. He funneled every new energy point into his character template, and the fusion level jumped almost every few minutes. Template integration, 28%, template integration, 29%, template fusion, 30%. As soon as the fusion hit 30%, a flood of memories surged into Sumu's mind. It was an advanced technique for manipulating cursed energy, Black Flash. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, when a physical strike and cursed energy impact land almost simultaneously, within a margin of 0.000001 seconds, space itself warps. The power of the attack is then multiplied by 2.5. It's a skill that scales with strength, becoming exponentially more potent. Because the conditions for Black Flash are so ridiculously precise, no jujutsu sorcerer can pull it off consistently. it's a technique that relies on sheer luck, but Sumu was different. He had 6 eyes and energy absorption, 2 extraordinary abilities from completely separate worlds. As his skill levels increased, his control over energy would dwarf even Gojo Satoru's. He could realistically aim for a 100% black flash success rate. Soon, by boosting his body with energy absorption and cursed energy manipulation, Sumu could go toe-to-toe with the Hulk. As Sumu was busy gorging on energy, a startled cry pierced the air behind him. He turned to see Pepper Potts, seemingly in flight, for some reason. When he glanced at Pepper, she emitted a blood-curdling scream, her legs gave out, and she scrambled backward out of the Stark Tower doorway. Sumu stood there, momentarily bewildered, and slowly tamped down the wild, gleeful grin spreading across his face. He cut off the flow of electricity, giving the ravaged room a moment to recover. He started to doubt himself and thought, "Do I look scary?" Pepper fled from Stark Tower and immediately glanced back, relieved to see that the terrifying white-haired demon wasn't pursuing her. She'd always assumed the news reports were exaggerated, but one look at the white-haired demon made her realize they were sugarcoating things. The reality was way more twisted than anything she'd read. The white-haired devil was terrifying. The memory of his manic grin and the sight of his white hair glowing against the crackling electricity sent another shiver down her spine. "Pepper." Tony's voice cut through her fear. Before he could continue, she blurted out, "Tony, the white-haired devil, he's here too." Tony Stark was confused. Obadiah. What was this about a white-haired demon? But he didn't have time to process it, because Pepper was screaming again, clearly in danger. Tony Stark cranked up his repulsors, pushing his speed to the max. In seconds, he spotted Iron Overlord aiming weapons at Pepper. Without a second thought, he dove through the hail of gunfire, slamming into Iron Overlord and sending him careening through walls until he crashed onto the street below. Their fight continued on the road, but Tony Stark was at a major disadvantage. Even after luring Iron Overlord to a high altitude, and using the icing phenomenon at high altitude to make him fall, he couldn't stop Iron Overlord. As Tony Stark was about to tell Pepper to overload the arc reactor, he heard crisp footsteps approaching. Well, what a waste it would be to destroy such a potent power source. The sudden voice made both Tony Stark and Iron Overlord whirl around to face the sound. Their detection systems hadn't registered anything before he spoke. First, they saw a shock of white hair, then piercing blue eyes that glowed in the night, and finally, a handsome face etched with a cynical smile. Then, the mysterious white-haired man said to Tony Stark, "I took out Obadiah for you. How about you let me have the arc reactor?" Tony Stark immediately instructed Jarvis. "Jarvis, pull up his file." Jarvis responded instantly. "That appears to be Sumu, the level 5 mutant who surfaced in Manhattan a few days ago and engaged another mutant in combat." At the same time, Jarvis projected Sumu's detailed profile and images of his various abilities onto Tony Stark's HUD. Staring at the terrifying blue black hole and the strange red-black singularity, Tony Stark was floored. Had the world changed this much while he was tinkering with the Mark II? After absorbing the intel, Tony Stark didn't hesitate. "Deal." Obadiah witnessed the entire exchange between Sumu and Tony Stark. He didn't believe any human could possess such power, but he didn't want any trouble, so he said to Sumu, "White-haired demon, help me kill Tony, and I'll give you $100 million and 3 arc reactors." He gave Sumu a confident look, waiting for the white-haired demon to surrender to money, but something he didn't expect happened. The white-haired demon smirked, a mocking glint in his eyes. You can make an arc reactor." Obadiah clammed up. He couldn't actually make one. He was just trying to con the mutant, planning to double-cross him after he did his work, and wouldn't even hand over the $100 million. Seeing his bluff exposed, Obadiah sighed, then said blandly, "Kid, you're too smart for your own good." In a flash, Obadiah seized control of Iron Overlord and unleashed a full-power attack on Sumu. He intended to erase the mutant. All that information in the video was surely a lie. No human could wield that kind of power. A blizzard of ammunition and the colossal steel fist came at him simultaneously. Just as Tony Stark and Obadiah thought Sumu was done for, they witnessed something unbelievable. The onslaught of bullets and Iron Overlord's massive fist stopped dead, frozen in mid-air. Then, they saw the mysterious mutant named Sumu flick his seemingly slender arm at the Iron Overlord, who was several times his size. Boom. A blast of black lightning erupted where the fist met the Iron Overlord. The massive Iron Overlord was hurled backward, tearing through walls, obliterating metal decorations, and finally crashing onto the distant highway, embedded in the wall on the other side of the road. Chapter 17, The White Devil is about to be defeated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing this, Tony Stark swallowed hard. The report he'd read wasn't some AI-generated fantasy. It was real, the information was accurate. If anything, it understated the truth. The report hadn't mentioned the White Devil's insane power, the kind that could send the Iron Overlord flying with a single punch. Tony, being the armor's designer, knew Iron Overlord's weight just from its size. Not even his own Mark III could deliver a blow like that. This was beyond human capability. Looking at the White Devil's seemingly slender arms, Tony Stark felt a wave of ignorance. After sending Iron Overlord reeling, Sumu noticed he'd actually pulled off Black Flash on his first try. That confirmed his theory. He could absorb more energy than Gojo Satoru, and his control was tighter. He might even be able to unleash Black Flash every single time. That meant every attack would be amplified by 2.5 times. A terrifying prospect. Ignoring the shell-shocked Tony Stark, Sumu casually walked towards the road, squeezed through the gap in the wall, and stepped over the Iron Overlord's crumpled body. Iron Overlord clearly sensed his approach, unleashing a hail of bullets and missiles, but the unlimited technique stopped everything dead. The few onlookers who hadn't run for their lives watched from a safe distance, some even filming with their phones. As Sumu emerged, someone recognized him. Immediately. White Devil. What's he doing here? Is he fighting that metal giant? He just knocked it down. How is that even possible? That the crowd buzzed with questions. Nearby, Eddie Brock, the future Venom, nearly burst with excitement in his beat-up Chevrolet. He grabbed his professional camera gear, his hands trembling, and started filming. He'd struck gold. Another encounter with the White Devil. His previous story had made him a star at the global daily news. If he could capture the White Devil in action again, a promotion was all but guaranteed. Through his lens, he watched the White Devil approach the metal giant. This was going to be epic. Inside the Iron Overlord, Obadiah's system screamed. Warning. Damage level, 36%. Warning. Damage level, 36%, that single punch had nearly shattered the chest armor. Impossible. The armor was made of 10 cm thick titanium alloy. It could withstand large missiles. How could a human, with a single punch, almost destroy it? Obadiah was drowning in regret. The global daily report was true. He should have offered the White Devil $1 billion, $2 billion, anything to avoid a fight. Now, all he could do was try to take him down. He couldn't let the White Devil live, not with those freaky powers. He'd keep his distance, exhaust his ammunition, and wear him down, but just as Obadiah planned his next move, the White Devil vanished. The system blared another warning, and Obadiah saw him, right in front of him, staring with icy eyes, his right fist clenched, crackling with that same blue energy, the attack that sent him flying. He tried to dodge, but the Iron Overlord was too slow. If he got hit, the chest armor would fail, and he'd be crushed inside the cockpit. No. No. Please, no. He watched in horror as the fist, pulsing with azure energy, connected with the Iron Overlord, sending it crashing back a few meters, but this time, there was no black lightning. The Iron Overlord only stumbled backward. Warning. Damage level, 38%. Warning. Damage level, 38%. Only 2% additional damage. Obadiah understood immediately. He burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. You can't just spam that black lightning attack, can you? Did that first hit take all your energy? You're all used up now. The fear vanished. Knowing the White Devil wasn't invincible, Obadiah unleashed everything he had. Come on. Let's see how long you last in this hailstorm. On the side of the road, Tony Stark emerged from the rubble, taking in the scene. Damn it. He can't do that lightning thing over and over. If Obadiah just keeps the pressure on, he might actually win. Tony felt a sinking feeling. His arc reactor was down to 2%. Mark III couldn't fight. If Obadiah won, Tony was dead. Shit, the distant onlookers saw it too. The White Devil only knocked the metal giant back a few steps. The giant got up and started firing. They jumped to conclusions. The White Devil can take on humans, but he's no match for technology. Yeah. That metal thing must be military. They're gonna take him down. A few mutants in the crowd, hiding their identities, felt despair. Are we really powerless against the government? Are we doomed to be oppressed? Everyone thought the White Devil was about to lose, but then, something unexpected happened. Chapter 18 2 Arc Reactors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su-Mu, ignoring everyone's stares, wasn't bothered by what they thought. He flexed his hand, wiggled his fingers, and said with a hint of disappointment, "Guess my skill level's too low. I can't pull off Black Flash consistently, or even get a decent chance of landing it." But he'd already figured that, so he shrugged it off. He shifted his gaze from his hand to Iron Overlord looming in front of him, picked at his ear, and drawled, all right, this has gone on long enough. Gotta wrap things up before Tony Stark starts complaining about my service." Then, with a gleam of wicked anticipation in his eyes, Su-Mu stretched his hand forward. Reversal technique, Azure Decay. Maximum output. Obadiah instantly knew something was wrong the second Su-Mu's hand moved. He unleashed everything he had, firing every weapon on the Iron Overlord. The resulting explosions could have leveled a city block, but they were all sucked into a blue black hole without so much as a flicker. The missiles Obadiah had pinned his hopes on were neutralized with embarrassing ease. No way. This can't be happening. Under Obadiah's disbelieving gaze, Su-Mu grinned and shoved the swirling void towards him. The instant the missiles failed, Obadiah went into full retreat. His jets fired at max, instantly putting 10 yards between them. Just as he started to breathe a sigh of relief, he realized Iron Overlord had stopped. No matter how much power he pumped into the thrusters, he was still drifting backwards, inching closer to the horrifying azure black hole. No. Obadiah forced the jets beyond their safety limits, pushing them past the breaking point. But even as the propulsion system strained, glowing red and starting to melt, he was still pulled inexorably towards the black hole, the speed increasing with every passing moment. Finally, before the complicated gaze of Tony Stark, the serious expression of Agent Coulson who had just arrived, and the eyes of all the other civilians, the once arrogant Iron Overlord was swallowed whole by the swirling darkness. The 4-inch thick titanium alloy armor couldn't withstand the impossible gravity. First the feet, then the chest and abdomen, and finally the head, twisted and contorted as they vanished into the azure black hole, gone for good. The one responsible just yawned and stepped away from the dust cloud, his white sweater miraculously clean, his hair just slightly mussed. The white-haired menace had once again used his overwhelming power to remind the world that he was on a whole different level. After taking care of Iron Overlord, Su-Mu sauntered toward Tony Stark, his hand casually behind his back. A glowing white object, pulled by gravity, floated into his palm, the energy source of Iron Overlord, the arc reactor. The moment Su-Mu held the reactor, he felt the immense power contained within, and his 6 eyes went into overdrive, precisely manipulating and absorbing the energy. After maxing out his own energy reserves, the remaining power was channeled through the system and dumped into the Gojo Satoru template. Even with the template fusion at 30%, the difficulty of further progress had increased, but the fusion was still moving steadily forward, barely slowing down. If the pattern held, he would gain a new skill when the fusion hit 40%. He was eager to find out what it was. Could it be reversal technique, Red? Its minimum power was twice as strong as the maximum output of reversal technique, Azure. As Su-Mu reached Tony Stark, the system chimed in, template integration, 31%, Tony Stark was a mess. His helmet was gone, and even one of his armored gauntlets had been ripped off. the arc reactor embedded in his chest flickered erratically, the energy almost depleted. He looked at the arc reactor in Sumu's hand and pleaded, "Could you give that back? I needed to keep the shrapnel in my chest from killing me." Sumu didn't want to see his favorite hero from his previous life die like this, so he tossed the arc reactor back to Tony Stark. "You owe me 2 arc reactors now." "What?" "That arc reactor was mine to begin with. Now it's mine." "Alright, fine." Considering that this guy had just saved his life, giving up an arc reactor wasn't that big of a deal. It definitely wasn't because the white-haired guy was too strong. Yeah, definitely not. Agent Coulson made a mental note that the white-haired guy needed arc reactors, possibly related to his powers. He then pulled out his ID and approached Sumu. "Hello, sir. I'm Agent Coulson with the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division. I'd like to ask you a few questions." Sumu glanced at Coulson's thinning hairline and felt a pang of sympathy before quickly averting his gaze. "Looks like you're working too hard." "Oh, yes." Coulson replied automatically, before remembering his purpose and continuing, "I was wondering if you'd be interested in joining us, becoming an Avenger." Coulson's invitation didn't surprise Sumu. With Nick Fury putting the Avengers initiative together, it was only natural they'd want someone with his abilities. Sumu was about to decline, then he remembered the space stone at the SHIELD base, and the mind stone that would soon be in his possession, and immediately smiled. "Of course, I'm in." Looking at the casual, almost flippant grin on the white-haired man's face, Coulson suddenly had a bad feeling about this. Chapter 19 Template Fusion Degree 39. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Okay, look, here's how it went down with Sumu. Thing is, I'm not your employee," he said, "this is a partnership. You pay me, I do the jobs." He thought about the letter promising a reward. He'd decided to hit up SHIELD for the Space Stone as soon as his energy absorption was high enough to handle an Infinity Stone. Payment, right? Even better if Loki happened to be delivering pizza that day. He didn't sweat whether SHIELD would be cool with it. They weren't dumb, they'd be happy to hand it over. Coulson took a beat after hearing all this. Then he reached for his earpiece. "This is above my pay grade. Gotta run it upstairs." Sumu just nodded. Coulson patched in Nick Fury, gave him the lowdown, then told Sumu, "If you came on board full-time, we could make that military warrant disappear." Sumu got it instantly. "A deal," he grinned. Walked closer to Coulson and said, real slow, "Agent Coulson, or Director Fury, you think I give a damn about being wanted?" Coulson kept talking to Fury, then yanked the earpiece off and cranked up the volume. Fury's voice boomed out. "Mr. Sumu, gotta admit, you're powerful. Maybe even more so than Magneto and Xavier. But Stryker's got mutants galore, some who can wipe out mutant abilities. You run into that, you're toast. Join us. We'll negotiate with Stryker, make the warrant vanish." Fury was sitting pretty in his office, sure of himself. He just dropped the bomb about Stryker's mutant killer weapon. Sumu wouldn't say no. After all, no matter how strong, he's still a mutant. A mutant without powers is just another dude who bleeds when you shoot him, but after a second, Fury heard a laugh coming through the earpiece. It got louder, turning into straight-up mockery. "Ha ha 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 ha, Fury, you serious? You think I care about that? Like I said, we're partners. Take it or leave it." He could always grab the stones by force. Working with SHIELD just made it smoother. Fury went silent. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Sumu didn't flinch at the idea of losing his powers. Could he have a way around it? Nah, impossible. He doesn't even know the details. How could he have an answer? Fury took a breath, deciding to swoop in and save Sumu when Stryker tried to grab him. Then he'd get him to join SHIELD for good. He'd see reason by then, so he said, "Fine. Deal. We're partners now, but if you change your mind, the offer's always open. Terms might change, though." Sumu knew what Fury was saying. He smirked. Relax, Director. That ain't gonna happen. What were mutant powers to him? Besides, he wasn't just going to negotiate with Stryker to drop the warrant, he was going to take Stryker out. After that, Coulson said his goodbyes to Sumu and Stark. Mission accomplished, he'd brought in the level 5 mutant, white-haired demon. No reason to stick around. Once Coulson left, Tony got back with Pepper and took Sumu to the top of Stark Tower. He grabbed 2 shiny new arc reactors off the table and handed them to Sumu. Here's your reward, Whitey. Huh, Sumu looked at Stark, surprised he got a nickname right off the bat. Didn't bother him, though. He thought it was funny. Before he time-traveled, Stark had already bought the farm. Even if he went back, would Stark still be Iron Man? It was a major bummer for him. Seeing the real deal was like a dream come true. Sumu snatched a random bag off the table, plopped one reactor inside, and held the other, soaking up the energy. Tony saw him grab the bag, clearly planning to keep it. He had to say something. You got no manners. Sumu shot back, hey, I saved your butt, didn't I, Mr. Big Shot? Big Shot? What's that? Tony asked, but Sumu flicked his fingers, and Tony felt himself yanked backward into Pepper's arms. A chair was already set up in the office. Sumu didn't bother being polite. He flopped down and told Tony, I almost died. You think I'm not gonna hit on your girl? Tony just stared. He looked at Pepper, who was gazing back at him. They finally got their feelings out during the crisis. Sumu wasn't having any of it. He didn't want a front row seat to their romance. He used his powers to shoo them away, and stayed alone on the top floor to recharge. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. As his template fusion climbed, it got harder and harder to push it further. Once he hit 35%, each 1% jump took even more juice. But with the steady stream of energy from the arc reactor, he finally hit 39% after a solid 10 hours. Then, Sumu yanked off his black eye mask and stared off into the distance. After a beat, he grinned, ditched the mask, and told Jarvis. Tell Tony I'm gone for a bit. I'll have something to tell him when I get back. Bet he's already noticed something's up with his body. Then he strolled to the window without waiting for Jarvis to answer. He tapped the glass lightly, and the super tough pane shattered. Sumu spread his arms, leaned out, and fell. When he got close to the ground, he used his powers to pull himself to the wall, kicked off, cracking the bricks, and zipped towards the rising flames. There was a nice, solid target there, perfect for testing out his new abilities. Chapter 28 Tragic Drama. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In his seaside lab, Tony Stark watched Sumu smash through the bulletproof glass on the security feed and jump down. He muttered, freaking monster. That's RPG-proof glass. He broke it with his bare hands, no powers involved. What's he up to out there? Jarvis, track his movements. See if anything's worth a look. Jarvis hacked into city surveillance, projecting images for Tony. Tony stared, then swore again. What is this guy into? Is he hunting monsters? Jarvis, suit up the Mark IV. I gotta see this for myself. Sir, the Mark IV is still in testing. Tony cut him off. Forget the tests. My design's solid. In Harlem, northern Manhattan, a huge green monster was tearing through the neighborhood, smashing everything in sight. The once bustling streets were now rubble. Gunfire and screams echoed through the area, turning it into a living hell. Heavily armed soldiers were firing at the creature, but bullets and missiles just bounced off. They were powerless against the green behemoth. On a nearby rooftop, Sumu sat dangling his legs over the edge, watching the chaos with a smile. He was waiting for the main event. Boom, starred at a sonic boom ripped through the air. Without looking, Sumu tracked Tony Stark's arrival with his vision. Tony surveyed the devastation. His face was grim under the helmet. What is that thing? Sumu said casually, just a weak guy who got the power he always wanted, then lost his mind. It's a revenge story, I guess. Then what are you doing here? Tony knew Sumu could stop it. but he just watched, detached. There was an edge in Tony's voice, but Sumu just shifted position. Waiting for the hero to show up. What's your excuse? Shouldn't you be prepping for that press conference tomorrow? Tony didn't answer. You're just going to stand there and let it destroy the city. Why not? It's not like I have to do anything, right? Tony fell silent. Sumu was right. He wasn't obligated to save anyone. He fired up the Mark IV, blasting away at the abomination with his repulsor beams, but they did nothing. Hey, green guy. I've got a present for you. Jarvis, max power. A blinding white light flared from the suit, followed by a concentrated energy blast. Tony sighed in relief. That should do it. Suddenly, a chunk of debris slammed into him, sending him flying. The armor crumpled on impact. The abomination, untouched by the blast, spat to the side. He glared in the direction Tony had been hurled, then roared, Hulk. Come out and fight me. Sumu caught Tony as he flew back, then teased, Hey, Tony, you back for more? Tony didn't reply. He wrenched off his helmet and gulped air. He'd almost met his maker. He finally understood why Sumu hadn't intervened. With that kind of power and defense, even he wouldn't be able to stop him. A heavy thud echoed nearby. Sumu stood up, stretched, and said, Looks like the hero's here. Time for the villain to make his entrance. He jumped off the building, disappearing from sight. Tony was confused. Why did Sumu call himself the villain? Wasn't that the villain? Banner hit the ground hard, leaving a crater. A huge green hand reached out, followed by a green giant with a furious look. Hulk was in the building. Hulk tore a car in half and charged at the abomination, using the car as a weapon. They clashed, tearing Harlem apart, but because Banner had taken inhibitors, Hulk couldn't unleash his full power and began to lose ground. The abomination pinned Hulk, pounding him into the ground. Suddenly, a mocking voice called out. No, abomination. You should have aimed for his eyes. Hulk, target the abomination's weak spots. Got it. They both froze, spotting a white-haired kid sitting on a mostly intact streetlight, munching on chips and giving them pointers. Seeing them stop, Sumu said impatiently, What are you doing? Keep fighting. I'm not done with my snack. The abomination recognized the white-haired demon from the news. A level 5 mutant, but he had new powers of his own and wasn't impressed. How strong could he really be? He could take him out just like Iron Man. The abomination grabbed a massive rock and hurled it at Sumu. The force created a sonic boom as it hurtled towards the white-haired kid. He didn't even bother watching the result, already turning back to Hulk. Then he heard a sigh behind him. TSK, bad move attacking the ref for no reason, don't you think, abomination? He felt a crushing force slam into his back, black and red energy surging around him. He was sent flying, crashing through walls, until he finally slammed into a concrete floor. He felt a warm liquid trickling down his back. He reached behind him to find his skin, tougher than titanium alloy, torn open. Green blood poured from a fist-sized hole. He'd been hurt. For the first time since his transformation. Through the new hole in the wall, a pair of azure eyes locked onto him, gazing down as if he were an ant. At the same moment, Sumu heard the system notification, Energy Point +1, Template Fusion, 40%, New skill unlocked, Spell Reversal. He